Alright guys, I promise I'll try not to shoot this like a Netflix documentary. But I gotta tell you guys a story for any of this shit to make sense. Now, I've been an audio engineer for the past 13 years. It's only about a year and a half ago I actually started playing guitar. But I've been building amps and audio equipment and microphones and pedals forever. So when I started guitar, I had knowledge of guitar amps and recording and stuff, but I didn't really understand what was important for getting the right tone. And I've made it like a personal mission of mine to completely figure out how Nirvana Nevemind was made, what techniques were used, what amps were used. So I did what everybody says to do. I got online and I read, and everyone said amps, and that Nirvana's Nevermind was recorded with a Fender Bassman, and it was also recorded with Kurt's Mesa Boogie Studio preamp, and then for all the clean tones, a Vox AC30. So I did all that, and I made a video a couple weeks ago about how unimportant your amp is, because I bought all those amps and I tried what everyone said that I should do, and I wasn't getting the sound of Nevermind. Not even close. And a lot of you guys might think Nirvana tone sucks, and that's fine, whatever. But to me, I really like it, and I quickly realized it's not an easy tone to recreate. By any means, it's very difficult. So I did what I kind of suspected. I trusted my gut and I started looking into speakers. And early on, I bought a bunch of Celestion 12T75s because someone said that's what Kurt used for Nevermind. I know he used them in a lot of his live cabinets, so I figured I would start there. Now I'd bought just about every 12T75 you can imagine. 1984s, 1989s, all in between. And I had this one Celestion 12T75 that if I mic'd it like at a really strange angle, like this, it started to kind of sound like that sound. And early on, I had actually used it for my In Bloom video, which is totally wrong, but I want to leave it out there because it's important, I think, to document my mistakes so other people can learn from them. So I was getting closer to that tone with this one specific 75. None of the other ones would do it, but this one that I had, if I mic'd it at this weird angle, I could kind of get close to that tone. But deep down, I knew that this wasn't how Nirvana Nevermind was made, and it wasn't the Celestion 12T75. So I went back to the drawing board, and I knew that the only way I was gonna get the sound of Nevermind is with the right speaker. And I'll explain more in depth on why that is later in this video, so this will make more sense. But I knew without the right speaker, it just wasn't gonna happen. So I did a lot more digging online, and apparently Kurt had a PV cab around the time that Nevermind was recorded, or shortly before. And so I did a ton of research on the PV cabs and realized that these had Celestion 85s. They're a very highly desirable speaker, actually. So I bought some. I put them in the cab, I tried it out, and I was immediately let down. I knew that this was definitely not the Nevermind sound. While they're really cool speakers, and I'll show you comparisons of them in a little while, I had to start over. I was back to the drawing board again. These weren't it. So being completely defeated, I decided to go ahead and put my energy into the V30. V30s were really popular in the late 80s and the early 90s, so it seemed like it could possibly be that. I'd owned a lot of V30s before, but they were newer ones and they didn't sound anything like this tone I was trying to chase. But I thought maybe some vintage 90s ones would. So I got a hold of a really early 90s V30 and it sounded so good. It was so close to that tone, and I'd actually used this for my Smells Like Teen Spirit video. This was by far the closest I had gotten to the Nevermind sound, but there's always a but. It still didn't sound completely right to me. And one day I was just randomly looking through this vintage guitar magazine, and I saw that Celestion had marketed the V30 as the new version of the greenback, hence the name V30, I guess. So they were basically saying, like, if you want that vintage greenback sound, try this vintage 30. And this is when I discovered that the V30 and the greenback actually sound very similar in a lot of ways. Maybe this is why my Teen Spirit vid sounded so close, but not exact. So I decided to message Brian. Brian is good friends with Ernie Bailey, and for those of y'all that don't know who Ernie Bailey is, he was Nirvana's guitar tech in the 90s, and if anyone knew, it would be him. So I had him ask Ernie, hey, do you know what speakers were in Kurt's cab around the time of recording Nevermind? And they told me they think it was greenbacks, early 90s greenbacks, because they were pretty sure that the cabs were new, that Kurt had just bought right before recording Nevermind, and they said, yeah, 90s greenbacks, we're pretty sure. So I thought, cool, let me try some 90s greenbacks. Except not cool, because these were the hardest speaker to ever find that I've ever tried to get a hold of. The early 90s greenbacks had a special cone in them that said 6402 on them, and they had a massive cult status, and anytime I would see a cabinet with these, they would like sell instantly. This is why all my tone videos stopped for a while. I spent months trying to get a cab with these 6402 greenbacks. I nearly just gave up and I thought I would never get this tone. I was pretty sure it had to be those 6402 greenbacks. It just made sense. I thought, I'm never gonna be able to get these speakers in my hands. I'm probably never gonna figure this out for sure. Until one day, I walked in Guitar Center and there it was, sitting right there, a 1990 greenback cab. I couldn't afford it and I didn't have the money to buy it, but I knew I had to find a way to get it. So I maxed out my Guitar Center credit card. I'll be paying interest for the rest of my life, but I bought that cab and I got it home and I couldn't wait to get it upstairs and I plugged it in. And it sounded so close, so close. It had that like growly, snarly thing, but it just still wasn't right. I was ready to just rip my hair out and give up. I hated guitar at this point. I was done, I was defeated. But I managed to get a hold of a ton of these 90s greenbacks. Early 90s all the way to the late 90s. Any 90s greenback you can imagine, I've tried it. I just wanted to make sure like maybe this cab wasn't a good sounding cab or something. And no, they all sounded like this. So I just hit a roadblock, like it wasn't these 6402 greenbacks. I decided to message Brian again and I said, hey, does Ernie know for sure? Like, were they definitely 90s greenbacks? Did anyone actually open up that cab and look inside? And they said no, no one knew for sure. So it got me thinking, Butch Vig rented a bunch of stuff for recording Nevermind. Maybe, just maybe that cab could have had vintage Pulsonic greenbacks in it. Maybe it was a rented cab. Maybe Kurt never even plugged in his 90s cab. So I went out on a hunch. It was the last thing there was to do. I was either gonna figure this out or I was gonna put in all this work and never figure it out. Now, if these were vintage Pulsonic greenbacks, I was totally fucked because the factory that makes the cones for those speakers burned down in 1973 and they lost the formula for that cone. And that cone is supposedly what makes that exact special sound. Celestion themselves, nobody has been able to recreate this sound. The only way to get it is with vintage greenbacks and they cost a fortune. So I went the extra mile. I bought vintage greenbacks and they sounded exactly like Nevermind.
The two Mesa tracks.
There was that tone that I've been chasing all this time. There it is. That's the sound of my childhood. It's crazy. Now I still hear like one little difference and that's mainly like volume. You can actually like hear my strings in the background of my takes. And that's because I'm in an apartment. Like I have a neighbor living right on the other side of this wall and I just can't turn up my cab very loud. But once you turn greenbacks up really loud, they start to sound a lot fuller. And that's the main difference that I hear. But for all intents and purposes, yes, it's these speakers, 100%. Also, I modded one of my quad reverbs into a Bassman just for this video so people wouldn't worry about amps. Like I just decided to do this. I can get the same sound a million different ways when it comes to amps, but just decided to do this to make you guys happy. It's for you, not for me. So the big part of the clean tones of Nevermind is actually the AC30. And the AC30 would have had a silver Alnico speaker in it. They call them the silver bell because they have this really chimey type of high end. You could really hear this like for Teen Spirit, the intro, or Drain You. That's a perfect example of a good AC30 tone. So I put some Moserite pickups in my Hi-Flyer because that's the guitar that Kurt used for Drain You. They have a very specific type of sound to them. I'll show you what I'm talking about. I have that same speaker, a blue Alnico, which is the same as a silver Alnico, in my Randall amp. I'm able to get that same exact tone with that speaker. You might notice I have this strip covering the front cone of the speaker. The reason I'm doing this is the original Vox AC30s had these too, and they affect the tone like a lot. Having a piece of wood in front of the cone, you're cutting out a ton of frequencies, especially depending on how you mic it. This is also a perfect example of why just a standard impulse response isn't gonna work. I doubt people are putting strips of wood in front of their speakers before they make impulse responses. Which also, I've been really wanting to show you guys. So I'm in the middle of building my own gospel. Got a big old thick cut of basswood. This is really essential to the tone of Nevermind, but also like, I don't know if you guys like the B-52s. I'm a huge fan of the B-52s. And a lot of that B-52 sound is this guy here. So I'm in the process of building this on my own, and I'm building my own aluminum guitar completely from scratch. I'm in the process of fretting it right now. It's a lot of work, got frets, and yeah, since I can't really afford a real Volino, this is gonna be the way that I'm gonna do it. And the reason I need this is to finish like Heart-Shaped Box and several songs off of In Utero with this Volino here. And what's so crazy about aluminum, it has such a specific sound. Like, so these are the sheets that I'm gonna make the guitar out of. Check this out. It rings like a bell. Sounds like a church bell. It's actually a sunny day in Seattle today. Can you believe it? To conclude, yes, Pulsonic greenbacks, which is actually really hilarious to me when people say like, go to a pawn shop and buy a bunch of junk and you'll have Kurt's tone. He used a bunch of crap. No, don't go to a pawn shop and buy a bunch of junk. That's not gonna get you Kurt's tone. Maybe for a lot of like shitty stuff that wasn't on a major label, but Nevermind and In Utero are really expensive amps. It's not cheap stuff. I can attest, trust me. Pulsonic greenback cab is like roughly $4,000 just for speakers alone in a cabinet. So. Also, in case y'all are wondering, my cab is relic to look a lot like Kurt's cab. I did it for fun. I was gonna like make a joke video. It was gonna be really funny. I was gonna pretend like I bought Kurt's cabinet and do a big prank. But then I didn't have time to make a silly video. And so anyway, that's why it looks like that. It looks just like his. My wife helped me like paint it and everything. It was a lot of fun. Anyways, guys, that's it. And I compared a whole bunch of my cabinets, so I'll leave it up on the end screen. You guys can jam that. And I will see you on the next one. Peace. One last thing that I forgot. Just wanted to tell you guys. I wanted to give you the news. Ever since making this video, my Mesa Boogie Studio preamp is sold, and I sold another quad reverb. I'll have to make the Bassman Mod one back to regular, and hopefully that'll sell soon. I'm only keeping just the Randall and one quad reverb, which has some special speakers in it that you guys are gonna see really soon. Getting rid of amps, collecting speakers and cabs for me. All right, guys. Bye for real this time.